bizarre. Hey, everybody, I'm Captain Tommy Scoville, and you are on the lifeboat. So I got so many emails from people that wanted me to do a show about celebrity and addiction after the Matthew Perry thing. And we've done this show. I don't know how many times. You all right? Good. Just checking. It's that morning. If you don't shake the morning out, you're not going to have a day. So we've done a couple of shows on this, and we've done a show on a Saturday night where we went through and started hitting. You know, there's that song, "If There's a Rock and Roll Heaven." They've got a hell of a band, and we started to go through just a list of the people that we've lost to addiction in rock and roll. Forget Hollywood, just in rock and roll. It is absolutely terrifying. There's been a symbiotic relationship between drugs and celebrity from the very beginning of celebrity. And I think it's an interesting phenomenon because over time, it's just become synonymous with celebrity, right? Sex, drugs, and rock and roll. But if you go back to the early days of Hollywood, there have always been people whose talent needs to be coaxed out of them, whose talent is something that, you know, they're fantastic until there's 25 people in the room, and then they start to get the shakes a little bit. And the stories are sad throughout Hollywood of people who can't go on stage if they don't have a little something. And if you go back, I think one of the saddest and earliest stories in Hollywood is of the girl from Wizard of Oz, Liza Minnelli's mother. Judy Garland was one of the first really horrendous stories to come out of Hollywood. And this was a person that, I mean, they were putting needles in her arms for her prior to her filming. And her story is horrific. And there's been so many people whose lives have been beautiful to look at, who were just in absolute hell, using drugs as a way to continue to get up on stage and perform. And it's tragic. It really is. And the list, I mean, the big names that jump off the paper, you could do until the end of time. But when we did a show on this, and maybe we'll fart around last night. No, you're good, Louise Marie. I did not have Goldie was never a mod here, so for us it was a little bit easier. I know she modded for all of the SPTV, or a lot. She didn't do all of them, but she modded for a lot of the SPTV channels. Fortunately, my mods have been with me for most of them years now. I've got a very dedicated crew of mods, and they've been through the if you're a mod on the lifeboat, you're a mod. We've had our fair share of people that just don't like Captain Tommy. Shocker, right? But there are people out there that care for that one.
No.
The inhaler. All right, hold on. Once again, I have to save my brother. I'm booked to see Aerosmith in monosodium glutamate, New York, in January. Steven's been through his fair share of addiction over the years. Not looking good for my trip. Kelly C. You know what I've seen, and that's obviously Madison Square Garden. I'm just being a Weisenheimer. That would be a great place to see Aerosmith. I have. It's a great venue. I've seen Aerosmith a lot. I don't know how many times. Half a dozen, maybe. Yes, but who mods the mods? Da-da-da. Da-da-da. Yeah, I've seen Steven Tyler in concert a lot. He's had a lot of drama lately in his life. I know that he's looking like he's getting to that phase of his rock and roll career where he's going to probably phase out. I think he's had a few a few nasty moments in the press. But yeah, he was a member of what was affectionately known for a lot of years as the Toxic Twins. He and his guitarist, Matt, what's his name? Joe Perry. Made up the Toxic Twins. They wrote a book that is pretty ridiculous that I read there about the early days of Aerosmith. Big fans of the drug we were talking about on here last week, Mandrax, appears in their book a lot. They were, I guess, that was one of the early days of the band's favorite drugs. They're very into to Quaaludes and things that took them down sort of in that direction. Sadly, I think that people, up and comers who get to Hollywood these days, just assume that drugs are such a part of what they do that it almost comes with the territory. Chris Farley was a horrific story. You saw Joe with the Hollywood Vampires a few months ago. Nice. The Hollywood Vampires are that's the band with we were just talking about right before we went live. Alice Cooper, right? That's Alice Cooper and
It's too early.
Really early in the morning. This is what we call a $20,000 pyramid lifeboat, where I have to give clues to everything I'm trying to say because it works but doesn't actually work. Who is the pirate from Pirates of the Caribbean?
That would be Johnny Depp.
Johnny Depp is also in the that band, if I'm not mistaken. See how I do that?
I'm a better guitarist than Johnny Depp, just so you guys know.
Well, there was no reason to throw that out there.
But
He's
irritates me. I'm sorry.
Johnny Depp. There you go. Thank you, Kelly C. You know what? Johnny Depp is not a great guitarist, to be really honest, but he's on stage. He's having a good time. He's a rock star. He should have a rock band, right? You know what? You had to know that he wasn't going to be a great.
He should be on a boat sailing around.
Christy Caldwell says, "Oh my God, I love the Hollywood Vampires. Alice Cooper, Joe Perry, and Johnny." There you go. Okay, so here's the deal, though. There's that one scene in the first Pirates of the Caribbean. It's the first time that he fights. He does a knife fight, a sword fighting scene with Orlando Bloom. And the sword gets stuck into the wall, and he has to go and grab the sword down. And this is something that you're going to go, that's crazy. But yes, I am. He grabs a hold of this sword, and his hands, I promise you, his hands don't come to the palm, to the pad of my hand, much less the fingers. Yeah, that man has the smallest hands I've ever seen on planet Earth. Megan Hawkins says Alice Cooper is a legend, and that's worth putting up there because Alice Cooper is a legend. He really is. Chrissy says their cover of Whole Lot of Love is amazing.
Alice Cooper always has a great band. He always has great guitarists.
Deeming9 says in Boston during his worst days, he would wear a scarf around his face to hide. But the hair, the jewelry, his height, we all knew. Talking about, yeah.
Right.
That is actually kind of funny. We always think it's just rock musicians. There's a principal clarinetist from an orchestra serving time for being a meth cook. Shut up.
Kathy with a great comment.
Kathy, you need to come on and tell that story. Are you kidding? Right. That alone, we could do an hour on that. Let me say this again. There's a principal clarinetist from an orchestra serving time for being a meth cook. Shut the front door. That makes absolutely no sense. No way. Valerie knows Johnny Depp. Actually used to be great friends with his niece and lived in a house he owns. Very cool. Very cool. So you've met this cat. Small hands. Like he doesn't look like he could wrap them around a guitar, to be honest with you. Terribly, terribly small hands. Recently had the entire the entire country carpeted. We're talking small. Oh, you know what? Miss B says, Valerie, please tell him to stop sending me friend requests on TikTok.
That's pretty good.
V, Comment of the day. I love you. You're great. That is funny as hell. That really is. And Valerie says, yes, surprisingly small hands. Yeah, you can see in that photo that he has terribly small. But I figured the guitar thing's got to be tough with hands.
Big
That's
hands make it easier.
big hands. I should have played the guitar. Really, Alice Cooper is from Maine. I did not know that. Oh, Maine Beyond. I'm a Alice Cooper fan, though. I'm a huge Alice Cooper
beautiful
fan.
fade.
Huh? Yeah.
Great golfer.
He is an excellent golfer, and he did a great series of ads for Callaway Golf. When Callaway was huge, they were running commercials pretty regularly on television. When the Big Bertha came out, and everybody was buying a Big Bertha. In golf, if you roll a putt and it doesn't get near the hole, right? So it's always considered really bad form because a ball that does not go to the hole can't go in the hole, right? So you're better off to be a little long than a little short. And if you're a little short, the fellas you play with are usually going to rib you about it a little bit. And one of the standard joke lines is, does your husband play, Alice? It's been a joke that guys have been saying since the first time somebody hit a golf ball, apparently. And he did a commercial for Callaway Golf where he rolled a putt that was short, and the guy said, does your wife play, Alice? And you look up and it's Alice Cooper. It's just a great commercial, and he's got a good sense of humor. But Elon Musk on X is out of control as well. Here's the thing: drugs have gained a certain kind of what's the word I'm looking for? An acceptability, I think, in modern and pop culture. If you watch any of the really, really popular guys out there, I mean, the podcasts that do, like the Joe Rogan podcasts or any of the guys that are just massive. Joe, as an example, has done so many shows on psychedelics and on drug use. I'll say DMT, yeah, on a bunch of different, like there's not a really heavy duty psychedelic that they haven't talked about and explored on the Joe Rogan Experience. And I think that I've always kind of been that guy as well. I think the longer that we stay on this planet, the more that we're going to start exploring things like trip drugs, or lack of a better way to put it. Heavy psychedelics, I think, have a place in life, and I don't think that we've spent enough time. There was a renaissance of what this stuff, of studying this stuff and what it might be able to do for. You know what? I think I have these in the wrong ears. I'm not a bright man. I feel like my brother. I'm sorry, that was hateful. Alice Cooper overcame alcoholic liver cirrhosis. Did you know that?
I did not know that.
I did not know that either.
Wicked drinking problem. I knew that.
They are glamorized in the elites world, says Roxana Mathis. Well, here's the thing. Great comment. And I think that this is something that is worth mentioning, right? We've come to believe in this country that if you get everything you want, right? If everything you want suddenly gets dropped on your doorstep and you're all of a sudden getting paid for not having to do anything other than be you, and you've got money to burn and all of these things, well, then drugs are part of that, right? If you think about it, there is a certain lifestyle that people just sort of automatically assume, right? If a person becomes a rock star, they're going to date somebody half their age. They're going to probably be on drugs. Am I leaving anything out? They're going to drive really nice cars.
Catch a break in courtrooms.
Right? Probably go to court 25 times for things that you'll go to prison for the first time around. Jeremy Shelton says, in the late 80s, I was addicted to Run DMC. Jam Master J. I went through a Run DMC period. I think the entire world went through a Run DMC period if you happen to live through that time. But so there's almost, When Chris Farley's a great example. When Chris Farley went to became famous and got the part on Saturday Night Live, I think it was almost a pregone. I mean, a foregone conclusion for so many people there. If you watch any of the documentaries on it, all of the people that knew him, it was like he slid into the John Belushi character and decided that he was going to do speedballs and he was going to party and he was going to die very young. Um, Vince Neil reference there, catching a break in customs. Yeah, there is a well, and rock and roll and drugs has always been a thing of people sing about it. From the very early days of rock and roll, people have been singing about
it's not just sex and rock and roll. It's
sex, drugs, and rock and roll. Even before there was rock and roll. I get no kick from champagne. Mere alcohol wouldn't thrill me at all. I get no kick from cocaine. One little sniff. Yeah, I can't remember the rest. But that's Cole Porter. And they wrote that in the 1920s. And as rock and roll, as music evolved, people continued to sing about it. If you've ever gone up on stage and stood in front of a group of people for any reason, you will find it is easier to do with a buzz on than it is to do without a buzz on. I assure you. And for a lot of people, that buzz becomes such a part of performing in any way. I'm still in a Beastie Boy period, says Lori T. That's getting put up there.
Me too.
That's getting put up there. You know, the Beasties never cursed in a song.
No, they did.
They did?
Yeah.
Late.
It wasn't a song that they made on an album. It was
some random thing.
Yeah, they're not in an album. Thing.
Yeah. Well, I've seen them, in concert. They got pretty raw.
Yeah.
You know what? Christy Caldwell says 7th. Thanks. Now I've got that Nickelback song stuck in my head because he did put up "I Want to Be a Rock Star." Just the but that song, I mean, as we are getting older, we forget that some of the greatest are now in their late 70s and 80s. Look at Paul McCartney and the Rolling Stones. Yeah, I mean, look at Keith Richards. Keith Richards, I promise you, is going to do more drugs than most this year, right? Keith is still doing what Keith's doing. I saw him in an interview where he showed up at the interview to tell this guy that he's not doing heroin or any drugs anymore. And the first thing they did was fire up a joint the size of your forearm. So obviously he's still in the life. Maybe he's not in the life the way he used to be, but Roxana Matha, it's good to see you, Roxana. Great comment. I believe it's like so many of our experiences. It's all fun and games until the fun and games have a hold of us instead of us having a control over it. Correct. But you know what happens to normal people, right? To normal people, what happens is reality rolls around on Monday morning, right? We go out Friday night and we go, Tony's coming and he's bringing a little Coke, and you snort a little blow with your friend and you go, damn, that was awesome. And you go to the ATM at 2 a.m., right? And take out $300 or $400 and you keep Friday going into Saturday, but Sunday comes into Monday and the rest of the world goes, geez, you know what I got to do? I got to go to work and I got to pay off that $900 worth of Coke I snorted in the last 3 days for no damn apparent reason, right? These people don't get to that. And if M. Hunt was here, he could probably attest to this because M. Hunt went on the road as a musician and was deep off in the life. Working as a public speaker, I was deep off in the life. Like I was wasted all the time. And all I had to do was, and I mean, I was making nothing money compared to what rock stars make. I mean, I was making really good money compared to what normal people make, but compared to rock stars, like these guys can go on stage and make, $60,000 or $70,000 in a shot. And, that's hard to party through that much cash in a night. You could do it. Make no mistake, you could do it, but it takes effort, and usually by the 4th or 5th concert, you're going to run out of that effort a little bit and sleep through a few. And the next thing you know, you got a little cash stacked up by accident. But, and although I think the golden age for rock stars is probably a bit behind us, the album days, and it's just that the industry has changed so dramatically. Now, if you're going to make any money, you're going to have to you're going to do it torn. Moni69 says a lot of musicians and actors like Ozzy, Chevy Chase, a lot of coke snorters, if I remember correctly, and now have developed forms of Parkinson's or Parkinson's types illness. Oh God, you scare the crap out of me. You really are. I did way too much cocaine, and I've got some issues. Oh, wow. V says, I spoke to Jesse Brown last night and he's doing okay. He stopped by about 3 weeks ago, I think. And was in the, he says he's doing all right. You know what? I love Kathy. I really do. Kathy says, being fundamentally cheap probably saved my life. At some point, I would rather have the money. But I got to where I saw the cash pouring out the door. Yeah. And here's where it gets frightening, right? So when I was, I guess when I was in my probably mid-20s, I started to, what was I saying?
Your 20s.
When I was in my 20s, I started boxing up cocaine that I was getting into Houston, Texas, and sending it to Boston, Massachusetts. And this became kind of how I was making my money. And for the first time in my life, I got to a point where blow really didn't. There was no allure to it as far as the money went anymore. Right? There was nothing magical about, about how cool it was, or rolling up $100 bills or any of that crap. There was just a ton of it around and you could do as much of it as you wanted. And at that point, it's a very odd drug when the glamour is off of it, right? When there's none of that Hollywood crap and it's just a pile of powder that you can go snort whenever you want. It just gets to be a really dirty drug really quickly. And I lost much. I mean, don't get me wrong. I got viciously addicted to it and had a bitch of a time quitting it. But yeah, it's forever going to be. Gav, thank you. I found him a long time ago. We're actually really super good friends. And consider him my personal friend and savior, but appreciate you. And there are people that believe mushrooms open up you to the demonic. There are also people that believe the opposite. That there are people out there that actually use that as a way to maybe try to get closer to your friend Jesus. There are people out there that believe that. I think falling down, car accidents is also a part of life. We get bounced around a lot. I hit my head on the ground and on the snow and on everything considerably too much growing up. And I'm paying for that.
A kid gets a concussion, school's done.
That's for Zen Wen. ZW, I'm so sorry. I'm starting to get a headache myself. Headaches suck worse than anything in the world. I'm sorry, ZW. So thoughts and prayers for you, please. I hate headaches. In fact, I don't know why I don't have these on. Started to get a headache and I don't have my blue blockers. Hey, I hear a cat. I always did coke in relation to getting hammered. The last time I drank was the last coke I had too. I'm glad I never got addicted to it. I am too. I'm very glad that you never got addicted to it. It's we were talking about it yesterday because we went through we went through probably 3 phases. Believe it or not, went through a couple of different coke phases. I have a stripper friend that does mushrooms to help with trauma. I don't think it's making her better. She just keeps needing more shrooms. You know what? Here's the thing with using drugs like that for trauma. You don't sit down and eat them to help yourself with trauma. You go to see a professional who uses that drug in relation to a counseling regimen, right? It's not, I think people, this is the nature of people who do drugs, right? We hear something and go, I got this. Right. I know mushrooms and I know depression. So if I get mushrooms and I eat them, I won't be depressed. And that's just not how it goes down at all. Right. There is a huge process that goes into this. And here's my deal with there was a comment earlier about somebody that said, mushrooms open you up to the demonic. there's more research going on right now into psilocybin and treating people with post-traumatic stress disorder with the use of the main ingredient from mushrooms. And it's done in a clinical environment. It's 6 sessions over the course of a year and a half, right? And I was reading the study on this. Nobody finishes the 6 sessions. Their success rate is through the roof in terms of treating people coming back from war, through the roof. There's nothing right now that they're having more success with than psilocybin. The next thing would be ketamine treatments that they're using as well. And then just the third would be group therapy with no use of substances. But the mushroom treatments have been phenomenal to help these people get through really severe post-traumatic stress. Whatever happened to ibogaine? There's a great question. Kaplan says, whatever happened to ibogaine? And if you're not hip to iboga, ibogaine is a drug that is made from the iboga plant, and it's another heavy psychedelic. It got a lot of notoriety in the 90s and early 2000s as a treatment for opiate use disorder. And I actually did this. More than once. You go in and you trip your huevos off. It's like doing LSD or a lot of mushrooms, and you trip for 10 hours, 12 hours, and when you're done tripping, you never get dope sick again. It's the most bizarre thing in the world. Like, it really does just blow everything out of your receptors and everything else, and you don't go into any kind of withdrawal. You just get really, really high, and then when the really, really high is over, you don't need heroin again. And for a lot of people, they also never get the desire back. So the United States of America, because we're super smart when it comes to drugs, thought, oh, there should not be any of this allowed. And ibogaine is not something that you can get in the United States legally. It's not something that's hard to get in the United States, but it is not something you can get in the United States legally. People buy it online and it gets sent to their house. And I'm not recommending that you do that, because you should do this with, again, professionals who sort of walk you through it, right? But yeah, this is a reality that was starting to gain traction. There are a lot of clinics that do it in Mexico, which is where I went and did it the first time. Well, the clinical environment is huge, Kathy, and you've got people who are professionals who can actually walk you through a process, right? Because I don't know if you've ever done hallucinogenics, if you've ever done LSD or mushrooms or whatever, but it's not like smoking weed, right? Like, this comes on really strong, and there is a disassociation from reality that happens to everybody at some level, right? It could be this big, but there's always some level. Holy crap. Marie Baxter says, I'm not a goody two-shoes, but I only tried Coke once. It made my nose bleed for around 4 hours, and I talked the back leg off a donkey. I never touched it again, as it scared the crap out of me. I talked the back leg off a donkey. Oh, that's funny as hell. I have my cat Oreo in front of me, purring on my fuzzy gray blanket with her belly up, hinting at a rub my belly. Balake, good to have you here.
Love that he's a cat guy.
I love that he's a cat guy. 2 of my favorite cats of all time came from a mother named Oreo. I had gray cats, and their mom was black and white, named Oreo. And what was funny is that, when my cats were like 17 or 18, their mother was still alive. Yeah, Roxana Mathis says there are several documentaries showing the benefits, but with supervision. Yeah, if you don't do it with supervision, it's a completely different thing. And I've been open and honest about it. Like, the last 2 or 3 times that I did psychedelics in my life, I did not do them to go to a rock concert. I did them to hopefully work through problems that I've had in my life. right? Used them in the way that they're trying to use them now, and had really phenomenal results with them. Now, you do what you do. I'm not advocating. I don't do that. But I've never been an anti-drug channel. And if you're looking for an anti-drug channel, there's a bunch of them. I'm an anti-addiction channel. All right. It's I think it's different. It's different from me, whatever community, but for me it is. Miss V says, I miss weed, but I'm not allowed to do that here. Well, then don't. Right? For the love of God, don't. It's a really good idea to follow the rules. It's there's a time in my life where that would have been the funniest thing in the world to come out of my mouth. But there really is something to be said for following the rules, right? It's it stacks the deck in terms of your best chance of success. What's that?
Look to the cookie. Look to the cookie.
There's nothing better than a black and white cookie. It can solve all the problems of the world's problems. Look to the cookie. Yes. Drug and alcohol-free building. Well, that's music to my ears, V. Good night. I'm going back to sleep. I'm battling my brain infection. Oh, my God. I'm sorry to hear that, Lou-hoo. You know what? Can we get thoughts and prayers for Lou-hoo? Please. Lou-hoo, I hope you go back to sleep peacefully and dream beautiful dreams. Thoughts and prayers. Yeah, Z-Dub, that needs to happen for your, yeah. Wait a second. It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure. Joseph Campbell. You know what? Seventh. You think Seventh could become the unbelievably fantastic quote guy instead of the...
That's a pretty spectacular quote.
That's a pretty spectacular quote, bro.
Follow that up again.
Yeah, that's hard, man. That's a tough act to follow. The quote guy is way too hard, man. You're setting the bar really high there. 9 of 9, 7 7.
The dad joke guy.
The dad joke is a little easier. Popping off with a dime piece like that on a regular basis is going to be a hard one. It is. It is by going down into the abyss. You know who we need is James Earl Jones. That's who should be reading this. It is by going down into the abyss that we recover the treasures of life. Where you stumble, there lies your treasure. Joseph Campbell. Funny thing is, honestly, I was almost sure that was Mayor McCheese that said that. But I'm not as well read as many. Prayers for you at Lou-hoo. Get all the rest you can. Much love and healing vibes. Yeah.
Morgan Freeman could have done a good.
Morgan Freeman could have done an excellent job on that. That might have even been better. You're right. No, you're right. What do all the numbers mean in the chat? Marie Baxter, the good news is this. It'll only take you about 6 weeks to figure it out. The bad news is we don't tell anyone. It's kind of I'm kidding. Ones traditionally is for those of us who believe in prayer. We say we're throwing a prayer for you. If you're someone who doesn't believe in prayer and you see ones going up, it can be your way of saying, I wish I could give you a hug from here. It could be your way of sending positive vibes. And if the concept of a prayer is so offensive that truthfully and honestly you're offended by somebody praying for you because you're that virulently anti-God, then there's probably a different channel for you somewhere else, right? For real, because if you're doing some ritual at your house that requires salt and wax, and you know what, I don't believe in any of that. But thank you, appreciate you doing it for me. Like I'm not offended that you're doing it. I never understood people who are offended by anything someone does out of kindness. It's never made any sense to me. If you're that person, the exit is behind you. I had to get rid of my exit sign. Apparently, I was being a little harsh. I started doing this number and pointing to it, and people thought, yeah. Amazing quote, then shot into the supergalactic realm as read by the captain as James Earl Jones. See? Someone who understands the game. Dennis N., good to see you. Alice Cooper has really gotten into his faith lately. It's such a contrast for him, but I'm enjoying listening to him talk about it. Deeming,
Forever.
30 seconds before the lifeboat went live, Johnny and I were talking about that. The first rule of the lifeboat is we don't talk about the lifeboat. Wait, what? That can't be right. That's right. That can't be right. First rule of the lifeboat is you do talk about the lifeboat. That is the first. No, wait a second. There's that. How you feeling now there, Franklin? Not having anybody invisible. I'm not sure I can pull that off. Although it does happen. People do accidentally get invisibilized by me sometimes in my big finger. But you're here, brother.
You've done it to me.
I have accidentally blocked my brother, and it took me about a week to unblock him. Because at that point, I wasn't really good at the whole unblock thing. But because of how many people I've accidentally blocked, I've gotten very good at... oh, no, Balake didn't. He said, why did the deer go to the dentist to have buck teeth? Christy Caldwell says, Franklin, good morning. How are ya? Charlie Murphy says, hello, Franklin. Hello, Dennis N. Iggy Pop is still performing. He is a neighbor who lives in a very humble house. Well, I'll be damned. Iggy Pop has got, he's got to be 80, doesn't he? I know Iggy is sober, too.
Body of a 40-year-old.
He has the body of a 3-week-old piece of beef jerky. That man's body looks like he is nothing but sinew. And he has looked like he has not aged a day since 87.
He's done some of the funniest interviews of all time.
Iggy Pop has done some amazing interviews. He really has. That's about as smart as a screen door on a battleship. It's a really, really good one. I like that. Kathy says, hello, Chase the Heat. Tim says, hello, Chase the Heat. Well, apparently you got real loud right then.
No, they were responding to my connections people comment.
Get a phone number from a friend. I delete it. Somehow my friend waiting hope 4 years now. I missed that one. I tried to get that, Betty, but I'm not sure that I put that one together.
At 5:00 p.m., it'd be a wrap.
Right?
And
yay, though, Moab. He laid you down by the land of the Canaanites. I implore you. You could almost say he has a lust for life. I'll let myself out. Rock and Roll Friday. Yeah, today. Well, there's a bit of a Rock and Roll Friday. So should we crank off a few since we're actually here for the purpose of the of this subject matter, right? The if there's a rock and roll heaven, we know they've got a hell of a band. Hardest overdose in rock in your lifetime, Johnny Scoville.
You're asking me mine?
Yeah. Or you could say Hollywood in general. It doesn't have to be rock and roll.
Jerry Garcia was devastating.
Jerry Garcia was hard.
That was a rough one.
Yeah, Jerry Garcia was hard, but he technically wasn't an overdose. What?
Chris Farley was bad.
Chris Farley was the one I think that hurt me the most.
Yeah, it was bad.
I think Chris Farley's death in my lifetime was the one that hurt me the most. Like, I remember getting up in the morning. I was working as a public speaker when he died. And I was in a hotel. And a lot of those hotels leave a newspaper at your door in the morning, like if you ask for one. So I got up and that was the headline on the newspaper. And my friend, my best friend at the time, was a guy I spoke with, and he was a better speaker than me, so he was usually 1 or 2 floors above me. But he happened to be directly across the hall that day. And concerts at Red Rocks are incredible. You can't see a bad concert at Red Rocks. It's the greatest venue in the world. If you want to see a concert, it is the greatest venue in the world. And Franklin apparently agrees. He says concerts at Red Rocks is something everyone should do. I agree with you 100%. I saw, who I saw there was Jackson Brown. And Jackson Brown is terribly, terribly gifted and still alive. Amy Winehouse, Deeming, good one. Amy Winehouse was another one. I think the reason that Amy Winehouse was a bummer was because there's nobody on planet didn't see it coming.
Well, also we're all in the life, so at some point people were dying before we got into life. And then you get into the life and you're like, wait, they're dying doing the things that I'm doing. And then it becomes different.
That's a really interesting point. I don't know if you could hear what he said. Thank you, Marie Baxter. I love that. And she says from Blackpool, UK. I'll see your one and match you one. Johnny just made a really interesting point. He said that for him, and I think I got to agree with this. People have been overdosing since, right? We discovered the poppy. And for first fermented alcohol, people have been killing themselves with booze. But once you become a part of the life, once you're getting higher, once you're around people or you understand that life, it's different when when somebody dies. Now all of a sudden it's a different. There's a whole different perspective on it. And he says Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, my heart broke, and recently with DMX. You know what? Michael Jackson, Jeremy says, again, the one that really got me was Farley.
Prince was bad too, though.
Prince was bad. Prince was that was a rough run because I was also incarcerated. So when we lost Prince, and then we lost from Glenn Fry, right? And Tom Petty. And we lost all three of them in a really short succession. And those killed me. I remember I was sitting in a county jail waiting to go to prison. And I thought to myself, there's not going to be anybody alive by the time I get done with the sentence. There'll be nobody left. That one really, Lumen says, Philip Seymour Hoffman and then Prince overdosing still hurts my heart. Philip Seymour Hoffman really was hard.
You know why?
Because he was just so freaking open and honest about his addiction. That's another thing that really hurts. Cheryl Dow says, when I was 15 years of age, I lost Janice and Jimmy and Jim. Yeah, that was a bitch of a year for rock and roll. Really a tough year for rock and roll. That was rugged.
27.
Sorry?
27.
Yeah. People that never couldn't seem to get any older than that. Can we get some thoughts and prayers for Anik Alexander, please? Struggling with some all over body pain. I feel like I'm at about 60%. Looking forward to getting that other 40% back. What's that?
Seventh Son is making his move. He's doing the quote thing.
Tomorrow is the most important thing in life. It comes to us at midnight, very clean. It's perfect when it arrives, and it puts itself in our hands. It hopes we've learned something from yesterday.
Okay, man. All right. All right. Okay. All right, cowboy.
He called it. He pointed to the bleachers. He called his shot.
If he does a third one, that's it. He's cementing it.
Setting the bar pretty freaking high, though.
He is, man.
Be careful, seventh. You know what I mean? I would have started with like Hamburglar quotes. You know what I mean? Rumble roll, Hamburglar. That would have been your first quote. And then from there, you could just keep setting the bar higher. But holy hell, you set the bar pretty high. Where do you go from there? My heart broke with Michael Kenneth Thomas of The Wire. He was in recovery and had done so much for others. Yeah. People in recovery hurt. You know, there are just people that G.G. Allen, right? Anybody remember G.G. Allen? I'm sorry to laugh, but G.G. Allen was one of those people that, like my friend said to me, hey, G.G. Allen overdosed. I was like, no shit. You know what I mean? Like he hadn't already done that. You know, I thought he might have already been gone. Like this guy, he was a rock star who used to go on talk shows to talk about how he was in relationships with 14-year-old girls. Like he did anything he could do to promote himself as a rock star. But you know how we had like the Sex Pistols. Let's be really honest. They were not great musicians, right? This was punk rock. You didn't really have to be able to play your instrument.
Even plugged in sometimes. They didn't have his hand.
Yeah, Sid, they would not plug Sid in routinely. That's the truth. But you didn't have to be a good musician to be a punk rocker, right? I mean, there were some great punk rock musicians. I mean, there are people that were really good at what they did. You know, I mean, Johnny Ramone played 3 chords, but he played it with such unbelievable style.
Joe Strummer.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people in punk that, but G.G. Allen was a completely different breed. Not only could he not play any instruments, he couldn't sing and anything else, but his claim to fame was the jettisoning of anything that he could get out of his body in any way he could get it out of his body into the audience. He was a really foul human being, but he was also very fond of talking about how he was very into doing drugs. So no one was really shocked, I think, when he fell down and fall 7 times, stand up 8, Japanese proverb. You're dancing a really fine line, bro. You're on the edge of a razor.
I bought the whole seat, but I'm only using the front of it.
So you can't even see how thin that is. Philip Seymour Hoffman played a role based on a spiritual leader.
The thing is, the second they come out and we know that they're struggling, like Matthew Perry, they become one of us. They're on the boat, even if they aren't. So when they die, it's like, man, one of us died.
You should sit here. You should sit here. You're actually having a fairly decent morning. What my esteemed colleague, Mr. Johnny Scoville, just said is, when somebody comes out of the closet and into the light and says, I'm struggling with addiction, this is something that is an issue in my life, then even if they're not standing on the lifeboat, they're on the lifeboat, right? I mean, we're all part of the same club, so to speak. We talk about it all the time. The cost of admission is simply the fact that we're struggling. Louise Marie says, Jack Kerouac. Never heard of him. Just kidding. The famed poet and writer, hometown of Lowell, Massachusetts. I've been a Bostonian for 20 years now and grew up with Boston as my home city. Jack is special to me. Jack Kerouac is great.
Legend.
Yeah, right. On the Road. What else? Dharma Bums. I know I'm missing something. You know what? Great comment. Absolutely great freaking comment. Jack Kerouac reminds us with alcohol use disorder that stomach bleeds are real. Thank you, Marie. It's a real story, right? Literally, it's. Henny said, Tommy, you explained how people didn't make it because of a lifetime of drugs. Robin Williams and Anthony Bourdain are in this category, unfortunately. Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think this is huge, and it's something that a lot of people don't get, right? It's the we set out to save the Shire thing. There are times where people get sober, and thank God that they do, but they never, there's so much damage that can be done by drugs and alcohol. There's a reason I go to the hospital every month. Right? There's a reason that I'm in good shape, right? I mean, honestly, I don't look, if you saw me, I look like I'm in really good shape. I got abs. I'm just falling apart, and I'm falling apart from years of kicking the crap out of myself. And that's how it works, right? And fortunately, I got out a lot sooner than a lot of people do. There are guys that do it into their 60s and 70s and 80s, right? So I feel blessed that I got out in my 40s. Unfortunately, I started in my teens. So, but yeah, I think Robin Williams, they're very interesting case studies. Yeah, Anthony Bourdain was a tough one. I think that one hurt a lot too, for the same reason that Johnny was saying. Anthony Bourdain was absolutely lifeboat material, right? God. I mean, that was just he was one of us. We just didn't have a lifeboat, but at the time, but he was definitely one of us. That's somebody that you watch his stuff and you're just like, yep, I mean, let's be honest. This is something we've talked about a lot on the lifeboat, but it's probably been a hot minute since I've talked about it because I feel like I get on a subject and then I got to stop because I'm beating the piss out of it. And, I feel like I got to kind of move on. But there's a there's a thing with drug addicts, right? I've told the story many times where I was in a rehab and they asked us very specifically in this a coffee social, right? So in the morning you got your coffee and your donut, and we're all living there, by the way. This is not this is inpatient like a big dog. We're not going anywhere. But they asked us to not discuss our drug of choice. Don't tell anybody what you're busted for, anything like that. So we all got in and we started, having coffee and hold on. Yeah, it looks like patterns, Franklin, to be sure, right? Hold on one sec. Jeremy Shelton is really a sick man. He really is. He's a very sick man. The wow, that's pretty solid seventh.
Yeah, that's it. We can't have jokes anymore. He just laid down the gauntlet.
Right? No, that's pretty solid. Anthony Bourdain was one of us. He absolutely was. Seventh says, sometimes you can only find heaven by slowly backing away from hell. Carrie Fisher. I'm shocked that that's Carrie Fisher that said that. Carrie Fisher is one of us. Carrie Fisher was one of us. Carrie Fisher was a woman who struggled with benzos and more importantly with opiates her entire life. And it killed her. It's another person that drugs just completely wore out, and then until there was nothing left, and then she overdosed. And that was a horrific tale. In the day and age that we're in today, Hollywood cannot get away with what Hollywood got away with a decade ago, 2 decades ago, 3 decades ago, right? One of the most popular drugs among performers has always been painkillers. And heroin by default, right? The strongest painkiller. The reason is, unlike other drugs, you get wildly affected and not wildly affected at the same time, right? There are a lot of rock stars can go on and perform, and you don't, it doesn't cut down on their performance. You don't stumble on pain medication, right? You don't slur on pain medication until you've gotten to the point where you're going out, right? But it's but now, right, 25 or 30 years ago, if you were a rock star and you had a habit, you doctor shopped, right? You'd have 9, 10 doctors writing you prescriptions. Trust me, Keith Richards wasn't having a hard time scoring. Now the computer systems have made that impossible, right? You cannot do that anymore. So people go to the streets. But now, if you're going to the streets to buy opiates, the day is coming where you're going to get fentanyl. And that's just what happened to Prince, right? He was out. They landed the plane to go get him more. And he got a pill that had fentanyl in it. Professional wrestlers. Thank you, Jeremy. God help us. Yes. You talk about a group of people that are they beat the piss out of themselves for the entertainment of others. And because of that, they're all addicted to drugs. That wrestlers are also flying around the country at all times, getting ready to do a show in some small town live, right? Every night there's something going on in wrestling. So as a public speaker, I used to run into them all the time on airplanes. I have been on an airplane with Jake the Snake Roberts at least a half a dozen times. For real. Twice with the Chief, with my father. And I remember getting on 3 or 4 really early morning flights with him. And I mean early morning, like 4 a.m., 5 a.m., 7, early in the morning, where he would have the woman bring him 3 airplane bottles full of vodka. And he'd pour it all into a glass and drink it on the rocks and then ever bring him 3 more. Like, I remember sitting across from him and thinking, oh, bro, that's just such a rugged way to start your morning. Like, I'm not laughing at him. I'm laughing because I've been there. It's just a rugged way to start a morning, man. It really is. But you know what? Franklin, there are definitely people that are discussing this as a concept. How is that at all possible? Not you, Franklin. I just got my esteemed colleague, Mr. Johnny Scoville. No, you know what it is? He's right. I'm at the top of the hour. Not exactly sure how that happened, but it did. Please have an awesome day. Diamond Dallas Page does amazing work with recovery and DDP yoga. Yes, you're right. You're right. Diamond Dallas Page yoga is actually something worth checking out too if you never have. I mean it. By the way, I've been trying to put yoga up for days. For whatever reason, the camera does not want me to shoot yoga. It comes up short. Half of it gets recorded, the other half doesn't. I'm not blaming the photographer or anybody that had anything to do with it. But that's interesting, isn't it? Miss R says performers who put their pain out there every night got to relive it. Chris Cornell or Chester Bennington. Interesting. Very interesting. Chrissy, you're going to have a heart attack when you see me do yoga. For real. I used to be very, 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 very into it. I'm a big fan.
All right, Ken. All right, cowboy.
I received a hi called Charlie. Hi, Charlie. Has to be this room. I don't know how to email or other. Sorry. That's all right, Betty. No reason to be sorry. You have found the boat. Then the yoga hands of God entered the screen. Yeah, no. This man here, he's anyway. All right, everyone. That's a wrap. And by that I mean that's a wrap. I'm going to go and take care of the important business of this Saturday. But now that it's over, because I always do this at the beginning of every show and complain, my lower back feels like it's been hit with a truck. And these have made the cut. These are now going to be the official headset products of the lifeboat. We'll go over that tonight. I'm Captain Tommy Scoville. The cat's nowhere to be found. That's my brother Johnny. We'll see you on the next one.